Enter at this stage the glamorous foreign exchange student, or should I say, harmonica. Yeah, that was a real surprise to me because it's rare that you get
Right.
harmonica in a reggae. It sounded fantastic, actually.
Hey, everybody out there. Welcome back to another Friday episode here at the Audiophiles. It's Andy, it's John, and as the, intro would suggest, Friday episode means a song selected by one of you lovely people out there in the listening audience. Specifically, this time around, it's Beefy Mon who offered up this track for us to go off and listen to. John and I have done some deliberation. Neither of us are really familiar with the track, so as luck would have it, it's John's go to go off and give this thing a listen. I went out and carefully selected the version of the track. This one is actually the original version coupled with a dub sort of remix version, all cobbled together for one for everyone's listening enjoyment, which means double the track and I suppose double the work for John. So thanks for being a trooper on that. The band that was suggested by Beefy Mon was Aswad and the song Warrior Charge. And it came on our Charlatans Sproston Green live at Brixton Academy episode. So yeah, John, just to reiterate, no real familiarity. I assume you've heard of Aswad and are know maybe some of their stuff or at least familiar with them. Is that the case? Yeah.
Yes, unfortunately, they took a bit of a sort of turn. Oh, not unfortunately, but they took a bit of a turn of musical direction and became much more popified
Yeah.
and sort of that horrible, not good R&B, but the horrible R&B from the late 80s. And they had two big hits. The first of which was truly horrendous. But, it got them famous, got them the dineros,
I'm
so fair
having
enough.
I'm
Um,
having flashbacks of UB40 conversations already, and how, yeah,
exactly. A very, very similar track, actually. And I probably would blame some of their musical direction on UB40 popularizing this sort of sanitized reggae. But I do know they were originally a very highly regarded reggae band, so I was very interested to hear something from earlier on of theirs that's probably had more of an authentic British reggae sound.
yeah. And my
So I'm
thought
very
is on
excited
what,
to listen to this.
yeah, yeah. The homework that I've done would suggest that that's exactly what you're in for. So, yeah, please, for the sake of Beefy Mon's requests and my interest now that I've given the song a listen, please go off and check it out and come back and let us all know what you think.
So, hey. Great start. That sort of three-piece start, and then into it. Very nice. Classic reggae groove. Really nice. Um, that bass is great, and it's sounds to me in my head like you. So far, we've not heard anything. So I kind of characterize the instruments, and yeah. The brass doesn't sound like somebody who's got quite a libido. Um, it's that sort of it's like flirtation. Then that long line is just somebody, yeah, um, really getting down to it. It's brilliant. Sounds great. Drums are really nice as well, pretty fluid, and there's that sort of insistent, percussive part as well, which is really nice. And that's a little bit sort of bounce to it. You've got this lovely sort of guitar that's sort of picking away, and I think some keyboards just doing chords as well. So it's all impacting on a sort of groove, which is great. And then we get harmonica, which is pretty rare in reggae. So that sounds great, really does. And at this point, the guitars decided to become even more sort of picky and fussy, but in a good way. It sounds wonderful. So yeah, I knew Aswad were a reggae band, but I didn't know how much of a proper. I think that kind of knew they were proper reggae before their commercial hits and the foray into sort of poppy R&B tinged reggae, which I wasn't very fond of at all. This stuff, this is the shiz. I don't know if it's it says 1980 just there. There's this boom every now and then, and I'm reminded of like Pong, but a really slow boom, boom, really slow version of it. It's a real early 80s sound effect. Follow that. I know, so that's a and then it moved on to something slightly different, but the guitar carried on doing the same, very similar thing. It's interesting they keep introducing these sort of little motifs, almost like sort of ideas or talking points. Here's another one. It kind of reminds me, in its structure of Fela Kuti stuff as well. So you establish that groove. I mean, it's a different sound, obviously, Afrobeat and jazz and other stuff to it. But it establishes that groove, and then you get this different phrasing, and probably everyone gets a turn to do their own sort of ideas, and then it comes back and goes back into the song core. Fela Kuti sings a little bit, and then we get to flourish at the end of the song, and that's your 15 minutes ish. This is a sort of hefty 12 minutes nearly, so I wonder if it's going to do the same thing. Nice drums. that sax little bit there is just starting to feel myself drifting, like mentally. This is taking me to a nice place of contentment where you can just kind of let it wash over you. Really nice, really nice. Let's say sorry. Some of these flourishes here really remind me of I don't know Rico. I don't know his full name. He did a lot of stuff with two tone, but particularly I believe with the specials. It played on the sort of the ice rink, whatever they want to call it, version of Do Nothing with a sort of weird lush keyboardy ice rinks. Well, it's a sound thing, whatever it's called, organ. But also on the 12-inch or the extended version, whatever you want to call it, of Ghost Town. Really wonderful, haunting piece he does on that. And some of this reminded me of that. I don't think it's Rico because he would be. It says on the label Trummy and Bammy. I don't know if they're mates of Rico or what, but it sounds like it. But it's there you go. Only halfway through. Oh, the bow selector. Coming in and out of focus. That dub bass sounds so good. So I guess it's a remix version of what we just heard, dubbed up. Yeah, it's really nice, particularly if you're in the mood for something like this. It's great. It is that sort of weird cousin of almost psychedelic-y, trippy music. And I'm sure we'll get loads of weird echoing stuff coming on and coming out again. But the bass and dub always sounds fantastic. To my mind, it sounds like blue whale vocal cords being struck. But it's really beautiful. So yeah, I'll try not to say any more and just let this wash over me. Well, that second half of it just flew by for me. It is timeless in kind of both senses of the word. Um, yeah, really enjoyed this. It's, you know, I completely understand why they were to do something like Don't Turn Around. Um, Pays the mortgage, and get some popular attention. This would get them the kudos, keep poor. Um, so that's the dilemma. Because this is great stuff, but you ain't going to buy your mansion in Surrey with this sort of music. Shame, but that's the way it is. Yeah, really enjoyed this. And yeah, I wasn't waiting for any vocals, so I didn't notice they didn't come. So yeah, the instrumental all the way through, really lovely. And the dub version, I think if I was in the particular mood, I'd enjoy it even more as it was on a par. I've both enjoyed both halves equally. Really, really nicely done. Yeah. Yeah, this is interesting to talk this up with Andy. Let's go back and find out what he's got for us.
All right, so you're back with a Warrior's Charge. What did you make of this track, John? Did you get the sort of more roots reggae that you were hoping for, given their sort of change in sound later in their career?
Mos Def. Yeah, this one opens with that classic drum three-piece set called Sofa and Two Chairs. And then straight into a classic, reggae beat. A fulsome brass starts philandering with the bass line. If this brass section was personified, it would be a lubrious dinner lady. Actually, after a little while, I did realize I was picturing all the musical elements of this track as characters in some sort of bastardized version of early Grange Hill. Now, for our American viewers, that is a TV program from the late 70s and through into the 80s, so I think into the 90s, of a comprehensive school in London. And it was famous at the time for these terribly behaving pupils who did really tame stuff. But compared to what was on TV with, like, beasts or whatever, because they dropped their H's, it was that people wrote into the Daily Mail to complain. It was ridiculous, but really cool. But yeah, so from that, the excellent drums with these sort of fluid fills that was, not over expressive, but just rolling in there. It reminded me of a character like the lad who's just gone through a growth spurt and all rangy and energetic and suddenly wanted by the football team. Likewise, his diminutive best friend, effervescent optimist who's always looking to start a school newspaper, but old Mrs. McCluskey would never allow it. The piggy guitar chiming in like a fussy schoolgirl with braids permanently stapled to her head. And in her lunchbox, you'll find individually wrapped opinions on the latest topic du jour in Jackie magazine. The sturdy or rock steady hand on the tiller, that is the keyboards, that streetwise girl that has a Saturday job down the boutique in town and is just a smidgen more grown up than everyone else. And she's been on the back of a motorbike even. And that really slightly annoying electronic pow that keeps bouncing around. Really sounds like the 80s, like sound effects. It's boom every now and then. And it reminded me of like the sound effects to a really slow game of Pong. Boom, boom, every now and again. Or it could be an irritating nephew that's just learned the French word for shit. He's repeating it again and again. That's what it reminded me of. Enter at this stage the glamorous foreign exchange student, or should I say, harmonica. I mean, yeah, that was a real surprise to me because it's rare that you get like harmonica in a reggae. It sounded fantastic, actually. Really enjoyed it. So then we go for a stroll, and we have all these motifs that are established by particularly the brass section, and then embellished in turns. And it's this, I just thought halfway through that this is very much similar to the Fela Kuti stuff you listen to, or that I listen to in general,
Hmm.
is that they have that sort of setup, establish the groove, and then you get little cameos from each person as they'll turn under the spotlight. Then you
Yeah.
bring it back, fella starts singing, and then you have a bit more improvisation at the end, and there's your 15 minutes. It's not quite 15 minutes, but does all this stuff in a very similar way, which is a really enjoyable way of doing it, obviously. So yeah, so we get these embellishments, harmonica, and then it's like put through the strainer and distilled and to conjugate into the next phrase. I have to admit, for the next few minutes, my mind gently rocked in a mental hammock as I drifted off to some faraway place of serene contentment. Um, Sort of mesmerizing effects of the groove sort of swaddles you in rhythms and interchanging cameos from trombone and trumpet and
Yeah.
sax, guitar twiddles, hypnotic keyboards as well, and then those fluid drums. And I think I said in the reaction, I was getting a feeling from some of the trombone sections in particular. They reminded me of, and forgive me for I don't remember his full name, but he's known as Rico. Um, and he works with some of the two-tone bands, ska bands, in particular the Specials. They have a great version of their song "Do Nothing." I think it's called the Ice Rink Sounds version, and it's this really old-fashioned sort of organ that used to get at ice rinks and at theatres that played old-fashioned music over the top of their song. And he does a solo in that. And in the 12-inch of Ghost Town, my most favourite song, he does this absolutely haunting solo on the trombone, which is just incredible and wonderful. One of the highlights of the 80s for me, that was. And I see from the thumbnail though that it says something about Trommy and Bammy are mentioned. And I think if Rico was on this track, he would definitely get a name check. So maybe these are mates of his or something like that. But that sound is really familiar.
Yeah.
So anyway, around 5:50, the music fades down and it's almost Betty by time. But wait, it's only half time. Chow down on half an orange and change ends. And Bo Selector, it's the dub side's turn. So we get this, similar guitar begins. It's tonally, something just slightly different about the sound of it. And it's rewind, very Craig David, and it restarts. And tonally, we've gone from almost Kansas, the black and white. Oh, that don't get me wrong, the first half was not monotone at all, but we're going from Kansas to Oz here in
Yeah.
terms of like the soundscape. The tones sort of fade in and out of focus at the beginning, and that bass is like the ringmaster here, and everything else is down to its lead. Echoing, phasing brass notes make you feel kind of almost stodgy at the beginning, like the very air is chewy and opaque. And only the insistent percussion keeps you moving, like some little guys pulling you along. Otherwise, you feel you could get lost quite easily. I always thought that this sort of version of dub is very much like a distant cousin of like some psychedelic trippy music. It's that same sort of effect on the listener. Really, really nice. Um, Even the electronic pong noises start to make sense in this dub version, and they're obviously not so far apart. For the last couple of minutes, it really ramps up with some lovely hand drums and this crazy trombone and with sax sidecar. Absolutely fantastic and mesmerizing. So appropriately, it cuts out to just the bass for a couple of seconds, and then the beat returns to usher in a pretty rapid fade out.
Yeah.
So yeah, I really enjoyed this track. Proper sound to it. As I think I said in the reaction, I can totally understand why they went down the route they did to earn some money and pay for mortgages and things like that. It's totally fine. But
Yeah.
this is the sort of thing for me. I mean, don't get me wrong, their sound is more popular. More people bought the records, So
Hmm.
they're all right and I'm wrong. But this will get you the critics rave and the credits, but not the money, which is a shame.
You're exactly right too, and that was like that was my crash course experience. Like what I extrapolated from my crash course experience was just that. All the record sales happened on their big hits, but all of the rave reviews from the critics were more geared toward their earlier stuff that was more roots rather than mainstreamy in sound. So I think your experience or your inference about how their career path went seems to check out. Like everything that I came across seems to say the same thing or highlight the same. But yeah, they are a British reggae group, as you were quick to point out, and I'm sure well aware. They were noted for adding strong R&B and soul influences into the reggae sound. They've been performing since the mid 70s and have released a total of what I was able to come across 21 albums, which is quite a bit. The band was formed in 75 in Ladbroke Grove area of West London, and the name they chose for the band, Aswad, is actually Arabic for black. The original members of Aswad were guitarist vocalist Brinsley Chaka B. Ford, drummer vocalist Angus Drummy Zeb Gay, lead guitarist vocalist Donald D. Griffiths, bassist George Roz Oben, and keyboardist Courtney Khaki Hemmings. Their UK hit singles include the number one Don't Turn Around in 1988 and Shine in 94. And I'm assuming that those are two of those tracks that sort of fall under the, went mainstream kind of sound that you had described. I guess it is worth noting that the band was nominated for 3 Grammy Awards at different points in their career. So that's, hats off to them. Initially, the band produced music in the roots reggae vein, with members contributing songs individually and with Ford acting as the band's principal songwriter. The band's dynamic soon began to change, however. Shortly after the release of their self-titled debut album in 76, Hemmings left and was replaced by Tony Gad Robinson, the only time in the band's history where a departing member would be officially replaced by an incoming musician. The band then released their second studio effort, Hewlett, I believe, Hulet, in 1978, before George Oben, who later played with Burning Spear and African Head Charge, departed the band in 79, with Robinson taking over the position of bassist as well as contributing continuing his role as keyboardist. The following year saw Griffiths depart, leaving Ford as the band's sole guitarist. During this early period in the band's history, they were distinctly different from Jamaican reggae acts, in that they wrote songs that dealt with issues surrounding the experiences of black youths growing up in the UK. However, once the band's lineup had stabilized into the trio of Ford, Gay, and Robinson, Aswad followed a more commercial reggae style, gaining a wider audience. They would continue to write and release another 8 albums under this construct of the band. Aswad underwent their first lineup change in 16 years in 1996 when Ford departed the band for spiritual reasons, leaving Gay as the only founding member. Once again, the remaining members opted not to seek to recruit a replacement musician, and thus Aswad became a duo of Gay and Robinson. With the exception of a brief reunion with Ford in 2009 for the Island record label's 50th anniversary celebrations, the band's lineup remained the same until Gay's death on September 2nd, 2022. He was aged 62. After Ford's departure, the band would release another 4 albums, their last being City Lock, which dropped on June 22nd, 2009. However, Aswad toured the UK in the spring of this year. The track that we were recommended today originally was featured on the Babylon motion picture soundtrack in 1980. The song was also released as a 12-inch single on Island Records in the UK. However, according to the research I did, it also features on their 1994 album, Rise and Shine. Now, I don't know if that was a re-release or perhaps even this dub version that was kind of like stapled onto the original version in this video. I didn't know and couldn't find it, so it's probably a good reason to do the version of this track that we did, which coupled both together. But again, I don't know if it was simply a re-release or a reimagining of the track, but I thought it was interesting from 80 all the way up now until 90, not now, but like years later in 1994, they would sort of release the track again. So if anybody has any information out there that can fill in the gaps or big Aswad fans, let us know fill in these little knowledge gaps for us that I tried to when doing research, but failed. So thanks. That album, Rise and Shine, peaked at number 38 on the UK albums charts and at number 69, nice, on the Dutch album Top 100. According to the online blog Eats, Drinks, and Leaves, Aswad were the most successful of the UK reggae bands, and this exuberant instrumental, Warrior Charge, was their finest moment. Rise and Shine spawned two singles, Shine and Warrior Charge. Both made it to the UK single chart at number 5 and number 33, respectively. Its lead single, the aforementioned Shine, became the group's second biggest hit after their version of Don't Turn Around. Andy Gill of The Independent called Rise and Shine a return to the group's traditional strengths, the ill-judged attempt at dance hall crossover that was too wicked. The album was Grammy nominated for Best Reggae Album at the 37th Annual Grammy Awards. So there you have it. One of the, I think, 3 nominations that they earned was for this album that features, I assume, the second iteration of this track, or at least, at the very least, the second release of it all those years later from 80 to 94. So yeah, with all that wrapped up and no lyrics since it was an instrumental, that kind of does it for the song and what I could find on it. I gotta say, the rhythms on this track were like just trance-inducing. You could just kind of like fall into this song.
Definitely.
So yeah, you sound like you had a very similar experience listening to this. I think you'd be hard pressed not to find anybody who felt that way after giving this thing a go. And yeah, just one more to add to the list of some really great reggae artists and songs that have featured on this channel, whether you've brought them from some of the UK scene or there's been some from over here or down in the Caribbean that have also featured on the channel. So, big shout out to Beefy Mon for throwing this our way. It was John with his sort of peripheral knowledge of the band to kind of sink his teeth further into it, and for me just to have any light at all shed on their existence because I wasn't even aware of them. So, yeah, a lot of great listen, a lot of fun, and I think quintessential reggae grooves and rhythms going on in this track that are really hard to ignore and some really nice brass work. So it'd be hard pressed not to enjoy this track. So Beefy Mon, good on you. Thanks for offering it up to us. John, thank you for giving it a listen.
Oh, my
Appreciate
pleasure.
your time as always. Guys out there in the listening audience, please let us know what your thoughts are on this track, Warrior Charge by Aswad. If there's other stuff, hopefully from their earlier period, or perhaps from their post-94 return to roots period, that we should check out, please feel free to shout it out down in the comments field below. Or frankly, if you have another band, another genre, whatever you want us to check out, that one of us or that both of us haven't already, please feel free to drop it down in the comments and we will cover it on the channel at some point. Certainly get it on the list and knock it out in the future. Also, if you haven't, please like, share, and or subscribe. It really does help us here at the channel. Doesn't cost you but a couple button clicks and seconds, and it goes a long way to helping us with the algorithm and the YouTube monster over here. So thank you so much. And hopefully John and I will catch all y'all in growing numbers on the next installment of the Audiophiles. We'll see you later, guys.